The most difficult period in my life, I would say, was that time when my dad was dying. My dad and I were super close. He was an awesome dad, and my parents lived right down the street from us. We saw him every day. And he was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's about 2 months after I lost a baby and nearly died from the after effects of that. And then at the same time, while he was ill, we did have another baby, but that baby, our son Toby, he was having a lot of trouble. And the whole time Dad was getting worse and worse and worse until he passed away. Toby was also getting worse and worse and worse, and we were seeking answers about Toby and nobody had them. We couldn't figure out what was going on. But by the time my dad died, Toby was nearly 2. And at 2 years old, he couldn't communicate at all. He couldn't talk. He couldn't eat. He couldn't be touched. He couldn't go outside. If he got a drop of water, he started screaming like he was being burned. If he saw a breeze outside, he would start to panic and scream and try to climb up in my clothes and hide. And we had taken him everywhere and tried to figure out what was going on, and nobody seemed to be able to tell us. And eventually, right after my dad died, Toby was diagnosed with something called sensory processing disorder or sensory integration dysfunction, which is it's related to autism in that if you're autistic, you'll have it, but you can have it and not be autistic, which is the case with our son. But it was so severe for him, his brain was misreading sensory input, and so every touch was painful to him. His brain would misinterpret it. So for example, when he got water on him, rather than his brain telling him he was feeling wet, it told him that he was being burned. And every touch was like that. Every touch was so painful to him, he was just shutting down. And for us, that was just an incredibly dark time, because I lost my dad, and I felt like I was losing my son. And that was tough. That informed a lot of my songwriting. My first album was a lot of songs that I'd written to encourage my dad and myself, to remind myself of the promises of God. After we went through that time, and we really had a miracle. Toby got into therapy right after Dad's death, as soon as we had the diagnosis, and because he was so young at the time, his therapy was incredibly successful. And he has essentially been healed from his issues. He's now just started 4th grade, and he's doing awesome. He's in school as a typical kid. And we had years of therapy and years of heartache with that, but we have seen the miracle God has done in his life. And I would say that time period really changed everything for me, because I realized, like, these promises that are in Scripture that I said I believed, I didn't just think they were probably true anymore. I knew they were true. Like, God was so faithful to us in that time, and He's been so faithful to my son and so faithful to my family, and it really changed everything. It really filled me with a fire and a passion to share the Lord with people. I don't want to waste time anymore. My dad's illness taught me time is short. We were not expecting that to happen. I mean, my dad was in his 50s, and you just don't know how much time you have, and I don't want to waste it. I want to get out there and tell people about Jesus, and that has really informed my songwriting since that time.